Hello there, everyone. It's Kristi. It's Sunday night where I am for a little while longer. Then it's going to be Monday morning. But I hope everything is going well where you are. I am joined tonight by two awesome people from YouTube, Chrisiousity, who I feel like is a sort of like a spiritual sister if we were atheist, sort of like a humanist kind of way, humanist spiritist sister, and my co-host for the happy hour, Kevin Logan. So you guys want to say hi, and then I'll do a quick overview of the topic. So Chrisioity first.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see
you. Hello to everybody.
Hello, everybody. This hangout is a result of something that kind of dropped last night on the internet, I guess, in certain circles. I guess the circle I run in, basically. My circle, this dropped in.
Don't run in circles. That's literally pointless, isn't it?
Well, sometimes it feels like being on YouTube we're running in circles, but I don't want to get all sort of like philosophical about the meaning of our activities here. Anyway, people might know I've been a critic of MythCon in the past because of the people they choose to put up on stage and put up as representatives for the skeptic, atheist, secular movement.
Yeah, dickheads.
Yeah, basically. This time around, it's all been kind of playing out, going on in Milwaukee, whatever. But I did have to comment on this exacerbation of an earlier problem. So very briefly, and I haven't been brief up until now, but I will be now. Richard Carrier was active in the atheist scene. He was also involved with some blogs, and he was on a conference circuit. He also seems to have, I don't know what he's like now, but in the past, and he's admitted this, be very open with his sexuality, his sexual preferences. And
I think it's worth specifically mentioning, because we're going to mention PZ Mo's, like he was on PZ Mo's Free Thought Blogs network. That's right. That is relevant. I'm not interrupting for no point there.
No, that's true. And that's one of, Kevin's right, and that's one of the things that he was connected into. It seems that when he was invited to speak on a student's circuit, like where you bring speakers into university campuses, he violated one of the rules of doing that, which is even consensually, whatever's going on, you don't hit on a student when you're being, put on this circuit and going to speak at these universities. And he did. There were some complaints. He admitted to it, and they kicked him off. Shortly thereafter, there was, I will look at PZ's video, but things went on where he was accused of things and people looked into it and disassociated from him. He, as a consequence, in June, I think, of 2016 or summer of 2016 or so, filed a lawsuit against PZ Myers, Stephanie Zvan, several other people associated with this controversy that he was working with for defamation, and he was seeking damages of $2 million.
$2.1 million.
Yes. It's we're going to talk about the case,
which is, it's worth definitely mentioning. $2.1 million is fucking ridiculous. It reminded me of the Dr. Evil moment where it was $100 billion. It's just an absurd number.
Yeah, I mean, the idea that he somehow would have lost that in income, it just doesn't, it makes no sense. So, but I haven't read the suit start to finish, so I don't know all of the justifications.
I don't know why the mafia aren't getting in on the student speaking circuit, because clearly there's a lot of money to be made.
Yes, if your income loss is going to be $2.1 million.
Exactly. Why do people even bother selling drugs? Just get on the circuit.
Carl's only going to be in trouble for a few $100,000 if he everything goes wrong with his plagiarism copyright violation case. Anyway, Kevin, you've distracted me. So Carrier brought this suit, and very recently, PZ Myers put up a video yesterday, but he was responding to events, I assume, in the recent past. The lawyer for the people being sued by Richard Carrier received a letter that we're going to take a look at. And the important thing about this letter is it basically says, I am going to bankroll Dr. Richard Carrier's lawsuit against you unless, and then he lays out these certain conditions, which we'll look at and evaluate. And the person who is bankrolling this has two important connections to MythCon. First, he's a big bankroller of it. He funds the conference itself, and now he's getting involved in this lawsuit that's basically punishing people for talking about what happened. And he's on a panel with Richard Carrier and Sargon of Akkad at the upcoming MythCon. And that's what we're going to be talking about tonight and trying to break down a little bit. So with that background, and before we go into the
Can I just
Yes.
throw in, because people should know, I'm going to MythCon. It's a full disclosure thing. I'm
Right.
going to this year's MythCon, where they are. I just found out about all this sort of nonsense. I had known that there were things against Richard Carrier. I wasn't necessarily expert upon them. I knew nothing about Mario Quattrucci, I think is his name. So I had agreed to go without knowing any of the details on this. But so people should know I am one of the assholes that are going to be speaking at this conference. And they know I told them when I agreed to go that I was going to continue to be a critic of theirs, that I wasn't going to be quiet about anything that I saw that I didn't like, and they said they were fine with that. So we'll see, I guess. But that's that's my story, so that everybody knows.
Well, that's okay, because you don't care about their moral outrage. That's fine.
I don't.
That's yes, and that's a quote from Sargon replying to Thomas Smith at last year's MythCon. I don't care about your moral outrage. Yes.
Says the guy who slams his hand on the table and gets crazy when Bernie Sanders sends out a tweet.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, Chrisiousity, do you want to, since you're already talking, give us your take on this, and then you can kick it over to Kevin when you wrapped up?
My take upon it is there's a couple takes that I have. One is that it should be noted that Dr. Carrier presents himself as a feminist, as a social justice advocate, as a person who's against these sorts of things. And yet here he is doing everything against those sorts of values that you would want to see, right? He's clearly, I don't even know why he's suing, to be honest. He has said in his own words that many of these things are perfectly legitimate, that he did do and say these things, and his he seems to have just sort of compartmentalized this in some way, like it's okay if he does it, kind of thing, or that he meant well. It's very bizarre to me. And so, but I think that like he's going to MythCon to promote supposedly social justice and feminist ideas. And here we see, I don't even know where to start. It's just bonkers, straight up bonkers. That it's like having Pol Pot come and talk about humanism. I don't understand it. Then there's, that's exaggeration, but you know what I'm saying. And then there is...
Yes, we do. Yeah.
And then there's the free speech, because this is a SLAPP suit, which I think we'll get into what that means later, but it is literally a lawsuit intended to keep people quiet, right? So, and not to have women speak out and talk about things that he's done that have made them uncomfortable. So it is an anti-free speech by its very, very core kind of move that he's pulling here. So, and that's supposedly Sargon of Akkad's thing. So I just don't understand how any of this works with them. That's all I've got.
Yes. Yeah, there are a number of issues. Obviously, the fact that he's suing them for $2.1 million is so ridiculous as to go through. I don't know how many years it would take him to accrue that kind of money, but I'm guessing it would be many, possibly even to take him up to retirement, for fuck's sake. So there's that. There's the fact that he's got, I think, realistically no chance of winning, given the fact that he's a public figure, and in America that really counts, because essentially, as long as you're not outright lying about somebody or claiming they did a thing that they didn't do, then you're basically allowed to say anything because it's criticism or parody or whatever. There are many defenses. And then there's that panel who, as we said, old, daddy big pockets, Quadrake, is one of the bankrollers of the supposed free speech event that is MythCon, which is basically shitlord con. Sargon of Akkad is a big free speech advocate, and yet you've got Quadrake bankrolling Carrier's silencing of various critics of him, and yet that panel's going to go ahead. And as Kristi alluded to, Carrier is the person on that panel, because essentially it's Quadrake being the kind of host, as it were, and then Carrier and Ben Sargon having the discussion. And Carrier's the sort of pro-social justice type, supposedly, on that panel. It's a nonsense. It's a complete nonsense. And yeah, I think Carl, if he has any semblance of principle, would pull out of that, unless Quadrake and Carrier drop their silencing of critics, because how could that possibly be consistent with the fact that, he says, oh, well, Nazis and Holocaust deniers need to be able to speak, but apparently professors and people who criticize Richard Carrier aren't somehow. It's ridiculous.
Quite. I think it was actually Chrisiousity who mentioned that Richard Carrier is being put up as the person speaking in defense of social justice.
I was going to say, Kristi, apologies, you've both got similar names. And
you can't tell us apart.
Again, that's a joke, people. Jesus.
All right, so before we start, I'll tell you what, I will share my screen now, because I think, is it time to go to the video? Can we go to the video?
PC is in the chat, so...
Hi, PC. We're we're pissed off on your behalf. I am, anyway.
And I just want to point out, in Britain, you would be called PZ. Just saying.
The PZ.
Let's have it right.
Mr. Z. It's good to...
The rapper, JZ. It's just the way it works.
So, a pretty good source for this, although you do need to carve out about an hour and 20 minutes of your time to listen to it start to finish, is a podcast that was done back before Thomas Smith changed his show title, and it's Richard Carrier's lawsuit with Andrew Torres, and they go over Andrew gives his take, and as Kevin already mentioned, the fact that Richard, even in the document, admits he's a public figure, makes this case really, really difficult. And then when you look at the facts of the case, they put it up as a statement on their website. Maybe one person mentioned it on a blog, But anyway, if you want to learn more about this case, I would highly recommend this. And then there's also a link here to Richard Carrier's post explaining the case, and links to Stephanie's van, PZ in the HISA. And there's some other stuff here. I don't know if it's still active or not, but these are the ones that I took a look at.
Well, also, and Chrisiousity posted this in the chat, our chat, the three of us. The Skeptic article about it as well was quite good.
Oh, right, yes.
And raised, I mean, it's not really relevant as such to exactly what we're saying right now, but it did make me laugh. She brought up a fantastic analogy for people who deny the actions of Carrier because he didn't do it to them specifically, by saying, well, yeah, of course, well, John Wilkes Booth didn't assassinate me, so I don't know where these allegations are coming from. It's so true, it's farcical.
I was not shot by him, so...
Exactly, he didn't shoot me, so he can't be guilty. Look, it's nonsense.
I don't want to go far down the rabbit hole on this, but I did take the time to look at Carrier's explanation post. And as I was saying in the pre-show setup, when you talk about a defamation case, that means that there are things in law and sort of bits of evidence that, criteria you have to meet. And most of the post is not about the law or even about like defamation. It's more him giving a defense of himself and admitting some things and denying others and saying people were talking about him behind his back, and with actual grounds for defamation as are set out in law.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. It's obvious. It's so obviously not actually a legit defamation case, just on the basis that he's admitted to so much of this. He was already banned from Skepticon before all of this really blew up. So he hasn't lost any earnings that he wouldn't have otherwise had, and he's admitted to much of the same thing. So, I mean, it's how are they defaming you if you've admitted to the thing they're accusing you of, which isn't the crime. They're not accusing him of a crime, so he doesn't have to be convicted of anything. He's already admitted to being possibly a little bit weird. And Peasy alluded to it. Some of the comments he used to post underneath blogs about how much he enjoyed sperm play and things like that. I mean, really creepy shit, man.
Well, we're going to go over it shortly, so thanks for previewing that part of the video, Kevin.
I think, and this might be a bit of a of an in-joke, but I think he and JP Gariby should get together and, start their own law firm, crazy lawsuits for creepers.
If those two get together, it's going to be the object of creepiness makes the irresistible force of creepiness, and we'll finally find out.
Before we do the video, I want to put up the link, the SLAPP Suit page. It should be already linked in the description box below. If what you're going to hear or what you know about this you think is ridiculous, then a great way to show your outrage is to throw a little bit of cash. Maybe, give up something. Like for me, it would be like 2 coffees. So I'll give up 2 coffees and make a donation after this hangout. You guys can check up on me, make sure I'm coffeeless tomorrow morning. But this is where you should go to help these guys out if you think this is absolutely ridiculous, as we do.
I want to say something to Dead Viney, who said basically stop kink shaming. I don't think there's anything wrong with enjoying sperm play or any other play or whatever you like. I do think that when people present this kind of information where it's not asked for, where it's not appreciated, where it's not appropriate, that shows a lack of boundaries and respect for the boundaries of others.
I'm sorry, dude, it's ridiculous to suggest that what I said was in any way kink shaming. I'm not suggesting that the act itself is wrong. I'm saying the fact that he was posting about this publicly under articles that had nothing to do with this to people he didn't know. That's what I was complaining about. It's, again, as Chrisiousity says, it's the lack of boundaries, which is endemic within his personality, it would appear. That's the problem. I've got no problem if he wants. He can be into whatever sexual proclivity he fucking well likes, but keep it to yourself.
Yeah, and as in the sense of make sure everybody involved is consenting and they don't just wander into the room and go, "Oh my goodness, what? I was not expecting that."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Talk about it with people who understand the situation or whatever, but if you post about it on public forums, that's ridiculous.
Right, I've got the video set up here, and we did a sound check before, so we're going to go over what Peasy said. Now, of course, he sets things up, and then he has very cogent criticism, so we'll probably anticipate, if you've not seen this before.
Before we even get started, a complete sidetrack, but it's a beautiful thing. You can tell that Kristi and I share a passion for Time Team, given the...
I was thinking about that when I pulled the screen up. I was like, oh, everybody's going to know what I was watching today.
I'll be honest, I'm a Time Team freak.
I love it.
It's like sit there and watch the team dig up a random hole in Northampton.
You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you're going to find bits of old shit in the ground, but it's going to be fun. You're going to tell a story about an old house. Anyway, bollocks to this.
One last thing, and then we'll get back to it. I am much more excited about going and looking at the shed loads of pottery. When I went to the last time I went to the Germanish Roman Museum here in Cologne, I was like, more pottery, more pottery, more pottery. Now I'm going to go back and I'll be like, pottery! Awesome! All right, that was a little Time Team geek out. So that was, we just get to do that.
The stem of a clay pipe. Yeah.
All right, now this is like a happy hour. Now back to the crap, the like nasty stuff we have to deal with after
the fun bit, and now back to someone being a creepy motherfucker. Brilliant.
That's exactly like a happy hour.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Except PZ's not the obviously it's Richard here.
Hey friends. I'm here to share a recent development in Richard Carrier's lawsuit against a whole bunch of people.
Now, if you guys want to just jump in at some point, please do. I mean, again, I don't think PZ's going to have any problem with us playing it straight through, but just so for entertainment purposes.
My mirror of that video is actually also in the suggested bar, so there we go.
Yes. But I linked the original video because I wanted to give you the views.
The fact that it's allowed me to mirror it means, I mean, we could in theory just play it through. We should probably comment on it because there's stuff to comment on, but I don't think he's going to sue anyone, is he? That would be ridiculous if he sued us over showing a video about him being sued. It'd be like suing Inception. It'd be madness.
All right, so I'm going to let this play. When you guys have something to say, just jump in and tell me stop. It'll be like Screen Junkies when they do the commentaries.
For the crime of not liking him very much. He has a new supporter, one who doesn't seem to be very bright, but has lots of money and who promises to back all of his legal fees in his fight to destroy us.
Stop.
The truth.
When he said that, because I didn't know of the actual story until I watched the video last night. When he said he's got a lot of money and he's not very bright, I thought it's going to be Sargon, this, isn't it? It's definitely going to be Sargon.
Well, he is.
I was close, you know.
Yeah. Anyway, we need Sargon to step up and speak out against the SLAPP. If he stands for free speech, then he should stand up. But anyway,
he doesn't give a shit.
No, but it's good to bring this up and point out his hypocrisies because this is a perfect opportunity to do it, where he can put his money where his mouth is. Because as we pointed out, he already failed on the so-called Day for Freedom.
Yep.
So he's got a second chance. Take it, Carl. Take your chance. Take a stance. All right.
True enemies of atheism. Lucky Richard. Before I reveal his identity, I'm going to give you an overview of this legal case. If you're already familiar with Carrier's attempt to silence his critics, you just have to hang on for a moment. But then I understand that YouTubers are true fanatics about free speech. So maybe you'll all enjoy this reminder of Carrier's efforts to suppress any criticisms of his activities. So, first, allow me to mention that Carrier used to be a member of Free Thought blogs. He was an enthusiastic member even, but then there were a few issues that gradually emerged to divide us. Carrier was quite open about advertising for sexual partners on his blog. When he announced that he was going off to a speaking engagement, he'd also request people to write back to him for an evening of intimacy. I winced a little bit when I saw it, but it was okay. It was entirely consensual. So we had no complaint, and we're really not interested in policing all content on Free Thought blogs. But then we saw nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say I think that sums it up. Even what I was referring to earlier with these proclivities, is nothing about it is illegal or even necessarily morally wrong. It's just a bit, just a little bit icky for public. I was about to say public consumption. Never mind. You know what I mean? For public airing. That's the thing.
And when we get into the specific complaints, I mean, there isn't so much detail, but it is a pestering.
No one's even. That's the thing. It's not. He isn't even being accused of a crime. It's just creepiness.
All right, going on.
Another problem. He was showing up in the comment sections of other people's blogs and prattling on about his sexual activities. I learned far more about his enthusiasm for semen play than I ever wanted to know. It was a bit obnoxious, but he'd stop when requested, so there was nothing actionable about it. Except that I was concerned that he was going to sprinkle explicit comments about his proclivities all over the network. And then he was dropped from the Secular Student Alliance's Speakers Bureau for breaking a rule. And that rule was, speakers must refrain from initiating any and all sexual behavior with students with respect to Speakers Bureau events. He was hitting on students, a behavior that was witnessed and to which he freely admitted. He insisted that he never violated the students' consent, which he thought was sufficient, but he was defying the SSA's rules.
I just want to say, it's kind of one thing if you're sent around to speak to corporate gigs where everybody there is, like consenting adults. And obviously at universities, people are adults too. But when you have a PhD and you're there with undergraduates or master students who are looking up to you, there's a power dynamic. And that's why that rule is in place, so that people can't use it as a circuit to get laid.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. It's like you say, it's the fact that you're a professor and these people are, undergraduates or whatever. That's an immediate power dynamic that can be used and possibly abused. I'm not saying Carrier even did that, but it could be, and that's why that rule's in place.
Right.
But also the fact that he's also then given the microphone and the stage gives him a certain rock star air, which again, there's a power dynamic there, or there's a kind of opportunity to potentially exploit vulnerable people.
And that's why the rule exists.
Yeah.
I think it's all about the pushing of boundaries, right? And this reminds me a little bit of what they talk about with Trump when he says, "Oh, you can grab them by the pussy." You know, they let you. It's putting your sexual proclivities out there first without being asked or having any reason to believe that they are desired in that space where it's really not appropriate to do, where it
Kristi,
can be upsetting. Sorry?
I was just going to say, I think it'd be, I can't just let that go, because it seems to me that that's a fundamentally bad comparison, because what Trump was suggesting is rape. I mean, he was suggesting illegal activity.
Right.
Carrier is creepy but consensual.
Right. I'm saying that as far as the issue of consent, it's that's where it is. Like, the idea of consent is that you before you violate a boundary, whatever that violation might be, right? You have a reason to know that that's okay. And you don't keep violating boundaries, violating, and then waiting for somebody to say, "Okay, stop. All right, that's not okay," because that shouldn't be put on them. That should be on you. You're the older, more professional adult in this situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you shouldn't put students, you shouldn't put people who are underneath you in the position of having to tell you that that's not appropriate, right? You should, if you're hanging out with if there weren't that rule in place, right? And you're hanging out and there's a student who is 22 years old and appears very into you and is giving you signals, and those signals are clear, and you sort of gently kind of press and then they come back. That's one thing. But if you're going up to a student and being like, "Hey, you know what I like is semen play," and they're totally unprepared for that kind of shit, because that's the sort of thing that he was. I don't know that that's exactly how it went, but you know what I mean, right? Like, he's putting something out there without any reason to believe it's desired or wanted or appropriate, and then saying, "Well, if somebody tells me no, I stop." Well, that's not exactly how that works in that situation.
Yeah, and in the first situation, if he was there.
Clarification, PZ just, I said that Carrier was a professor. Apparently he's not and never has been.
No, he's a doctor.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, those distinctions they're really big deals to people with doctorates and professors. Like, I think on the outside, people are like, "Oh, you're like a professor." Like, no, I'm a doctor.
Yeah, you're a science man. That's fine.
Yeah.
Science.
All right, so let's so basically, pushing boundaries in this case, not abuse of power, but definitely looking to possibly abuse it if his goal was to use it to get laid as part of the gig. Yeah.
This is definitely treading on very creepy ground. He was using his status as a speaker to look for sex among young adults. And then the final straw. He was banned from a major conference for his repeated boundary-pushing behavior. This was a thoroughly believable accusation because we'd already seen signs of it, so we were compelled to take action. We suspended his posting privileges while we investigated the accusations. We appointed a group of bloggers, which did not include me, begin an evaluation of the accusations and make a recommendation of an appropriate response.
I wonder if this would have happened after Me Too. How this would have played out. Because what happened to Krauss was pretty different. Carrier's still being platformed here, and so.
Yeah.
But anyway, pre-Me Too, we have to remember in terms of how people reacted to this.
Note that part of this announcement was an invitation to send testimonials or evidence to me, which I would have forwarded to the committee. And all this effort to investigate turned out to be entirely moot because Carrier almost immediately announced his resignation from the blog network. And shortly after that, he announced that he was suing me personally, Free Thought Blogs, Stephanie Zvan, the Orbit Blog Network, Lauren Lane, Skepticon, and Amy Frank Skiba, one of his accusers. It was absurd. To be fair, though, here's Carrier's perspective on the whole issue in his own words. So, he says, imagine you are accused of multiple crimes by a coordinated, interstate group of bloggers and event planners.
Very calm and reasoned. So anyway, sorry, I'll let it roll.
Sounds like a conspiracy. But they then refuse to tell you what you are accused of doing, or by whom, or when or where the incidents are supposed to have occurred. Well, first of all, I have to say he was not accused of crimes. He was accused of behavior that violated the codes of conduct of several organizations, including Free Thought Blogs. He was thought to be acting rather creepily, and those several organizations insisted on not being associated with him. That's it. There was no legal threat. There was no talk of crimes. There was no talk of even things like lawsuits. The claim that we're a coordinated interstate group is laughable. No one would look at Free Thought Blogs management and accuse it of being coordinated. I meet Lauren Lane most once a year at Skepticon, where she's always busy trying to keep the show running. I don't recall actually meeting Amy Frank Skiba, and Stephanie Zvan is a friend who lives 150 miles away from me. So there was no conspiracy for us to get together and coordinate an attack on Richard Carrier.
Should we skip this bit? Because we kind of, I guess people can go back and watch this, and there's quite a lot here, but I wanted to get more to the letter bit since it's 15 minutes long. Are you guys okay with that?
Yep.
Yeah, Kevin, you too? I'm just going to take...
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. People should go and watch My Mirror of it instead, because, he's famous enough. He's okay. He's fine.
All right. I think this is from the court case. So I think we're gonna jump in here. Self-plug from Kevin.
Mr. Carrier,
immediately. That's new, yeah.
Are doomed. Drop the suit and we'll shrug and go back to ignoring you. But who is trying to bankrupt who here? Hey, look at his claims. He's suing us for $2.1 million. Not, we were trying to bankrupt him by suing him for millions of dollars. No, he's suing us. Okay. That's ridiculous.
That's actually a good point as well. Is that he moans about, they're going to sue me by suing me or whatever, and that's literally what he's doing to these people. Again, who he's only suing them because they don't like him.
Yeah, I don't even see the defamation in the publications that they've had. And what proof is there that they knew they were publishing something false or they didn't care? It just doesn't seem to meet the basic legal definitions. And again, as has been pointed out, he's a public person. So the threshold for tolerating things people say about you, as long as they're not untrue, is pretty high.
Yes.
He's admitted to a great many of the things.
Yeah.
He's freely and fully said, oh, yeah, I did that. Oh, yeah, I went up and I told that woman that, I'd had a vasectomy and that increased my sexual stamina. And then I came onto her while her husband was passed out. I don't see the problem. Like
is that true, by the way? Does that work with vasectomies? I don't know.
I guess you have to ask him. He can probably tell you.
I have no intention of asking anything other than, can you please fuck off? Basically, at this point, he's done.
We could look it up, but I don't know. But the point is, these are the sort of creepy actions that will get you uninvited from many a conference that just doesn't really want to deal with that shit.
But it is one of the things you can do, one of the creepy things you can do that will definitely get you invited to one specific conference.
Yes.
As the representative for social justice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Get invited to speak about social justice to a free speech conference.
That's other than Chrisiousity and Michael Rowlands, everyone else at that conference, or everyone else that's speaking or whatever. I mean,
Vadim.
Martin Hughes. Isn't Martin Hughes going?
I don't think he's definitely said yes.
Oh, okay. I just saw some discussion about that, so I guess
Yeah,
we'll wait till they see the final lineup. This might make some people reconsider what they're going to do there. So
yeah.
Apparently, it's a mixed bag. The circumcision issue, not circumcision.
Are you looking this up online while we're live?
Issue. I had to go. I had to know because that sounded fascinating to me. I mean, I have no intention of ever doing it because elective surgeries are a little silly for my book, but whatever. But yeah, apparently it depends basically on your original anatomical issues.
So vasectomies for the win?
They covered the spread, which that's an unideal.
Okay.
All right, it really is a happy hour. All right, getting on with the video.
Now, all of this is open to public, but no surprises here other than the depths of Richard Carrier's oblivious narcissism. But I have to share with you one new development. This is what you've been waiting for, the new word from the case. It's a letter sent by a third party to our lawyer. Richard Carrier seems to have found a sugar daddy. It's a remarkable letter. So he writes, I have reviewed evidence recently published arguing your clients have defamed Richard Carrier, and we have become very concerned that your clients may have engaged in dangerous misconduct that threatens a movement and cause we care about. So our correspondent wrote to our lawyer to say he has reviewed.
Sorry, I find that's the most ridiculous line of the lot, really, because he's literally bankrolling an event which is doing precisely that.
Right. Yeah.
He's literally bankrolling a movement which is involved in the people involved have been potentially involved in all kinds of dangerous misconduct and are definitely threatening movement atheism. Imagining such a thing even still exists, but you get the idea.
Any movement that relies on Richard Carrier not being a creep to the health of that movement is fucked.
Yeah, but he's going to an event where he isn't even going to be the creepiest motherfucker there.
Yeah, he's got a battle with like the She-Ra boob-obsessed quartering and Sargon if he doesn't show principles and turn down his speaking slot.
Absolutely.
Quartering is definitely, I would go with Quartering as the creepiest motherfucker.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's got to be rare that Carrier walks into a room and he isn't the creepiest fucker there. That's got to be an odd feeling for him. I don't know. Would that make him feel insecure? Would he have to up his creepy game? I don't know.
I'm going to ask you guys.
I certainly hope not. But you know, man babies are going to man baby. You know.
I'm going to ask you guys if this sounds familiar. The rest of this letter, and I know you've watched it already, but basically it reminds me of you've made a claim about feminism. I demand that you prove to me that the wage gap, for instance, exists. If you don't reply to this message, you've admitted you can't do it. Not
just that, but you've got to reply in 140 characters.
Yeah, on Twitter.
Well, 280 now, I suppose. But yeah, ridiculous.
All right, onward.
Viewed evidence. The evidence, it turns out, is simply Richard Carrier's own biased account. That stuff I just showed you about how he has been accused of crimes and wasn't allowed to give his side of the story.
I found that podcast with Andrew Torres by putting Richard Carrier lawsuit into Google. But apparently this guy could only read Richard's blog posts as a basis for his letter here.
Well, that's the thing. We shouldn't be surprised that the bankroller of an event like MythCon that would invite someone like Sargon has got the Sargonite
attention span,
research methodology down unpacked. I mean, he's got it fucking perfect. I read the headline of this story, and I'm going to ask you a series of questions that I could have found out myself, but fuck it.
They may or may not be related to the actual thing that happened.
Exactly. Question 1: how does one make an omelette?
All right, moving on.
And how we're trying to bankrupt him by tricking him into suing us. That's all material our lawyer already knows and is only part of the story. But this guy thinks not giving Richard Carrier a speaking slot at a conference or a blog on our network is dangerous misconduct. We are apparently also threatening a movement and a cause. What cause is that? the right to hit on students at conferences, but it gets even more pompous.
But it is sort of true. I mean, what are they arguing? Yeah. The point is there. They're literally, we're infringing this man's right to be a creepy fucker with young people? Oh, brilliant.
Don't talk about what he's done, so people disinvite him, so they don't want people like that at their conference. I don't...
Because apparently atheism isn't a search for truth anymore. It's literally just silence people you don't like.
Or fund the lawsuits to silence people you don't like.
Exactly, yeah. But that's the thing, yeah. The intrinsically, the argument that MythCon were making about being a free speech event has been blown out of the fucking water by this.
Mm-hmm.
They're so obviously not. They don't give a fuck about this. They're just a shitlord con.
Yeah, I don't see how you can fund a SLAPP suit not knowing the facts, or demanding, as he'll point out, that their side turn over all the relevant facts when he could just do a Google search as a sort of way to leverage out the case against them before they go to court. It's such shitlord tactics,
Yeah, well, yeah, and it is the ultimate shitlord tactic of, I'm going to interject here, and you're going to have to explain everything to me, otherwise X, Y, and Z. And you think, you're not a part of this. It's got nothing to do with you. Fuck off.
Debate me or get off the internet.
Exactly.
All right.
He says, it is my intention to fully fund Richard Carrier's lawsuit against your clients, unless you can persuade me he has misled me as to the facts, and that your clients do have a realistic chance of prevailing at trial. So in reflecting on whether to support Dr. Carrier, I want to test the facts of the case. Accordingly, I am giving you, our lawyer, the opportunity to dissuade me.
Oh, isn't he a good guy? Look at that. He's giving you the chance to do all that work to convince him of something that he probably already has made up his mind about.
Yeah, exactly. He was prepared to bankroll out of his own pocket this nonsense. He knows enough about it, and he's made his mind up. This is just so he can say, look, we asked them to explain, and they didn't respond.
And again, it's like the spoon feeding you find on Twitter. People are like, well, show me a quote of him doing that. Like they make an assertion and then they want you to go look it up.
Yeah.
And do all the work for them. Like, go do all this work for me because I can't be bothered to put in Richard Carrier lawsuit into Google.
Well, literally, XDX in the comment just said they just Googled Richard Carrier lawsuit and got exactly the same result. So clearly, just Googling those three fucking easy words, you would get all of the information you could need.
Yeah, and that would be this information right here, very nicely provided to us by Andrew Torres and Thomas Smith. Thomas Smith coming back to haunt MythCon.
Yeah, the bizarre thing. There's a delightful Schadenfreude in that, absolutely. But it surely would have taken less time for him to have done that than to actually write the letter. What? He could have just typed 3 words instead. It would have been much easier. So there you go.
All right.
This is just stupid. He's threatening to bankroll a SLAPP suit unless our lawyer lays out every single detail of our case. We're supposed to just roll over and make our case to the self-appointed moneybags rather than the judge. And we're supposed to reveal everything to an advocate for the plaintiff before we go before a real judge in a real courtroom.
Can I just say, when he said self-appointed moneybags, literally the idea of him sat in a room and then all of a sudden the Monopoly man just strolls through the door came into my head. And that amused me. That painted a delightful picture in my crazy head.
Well, I've done enough hangouts now with Kevin where I heard the intake of breath and then the struggle to not interrupt in him.
Well, it's a desperate struggle for me not to interrupt. Because, I mean, especially because I'm not just in a room now with one woman, there are 2, so I have to interrupt both.
He has to interrupt, otherwise he's not a man.
Exactly, yeah, they'll take my man card away. And then what have I got? Nothing.
All right, here we go. I think we're at the ending paragraph now.
We'd fire our lawyer if he caved into this absurd demand. Fortunately, our lawyer, Mark Randazza, is competent and didn't even dignify this pretentious nonsense with a comment.
Yeah, there's shade.
Yeah, he's competent. He's not a fucking idiot. Jesus.
You can read that and go, that makes no sense. Like anyway.
Yeah, please reveal your entire case to me, some random prat. Anyway, Peasy says in the comments, it's suspected. I'm just gonna read what he's written. We suspect that Carrier is going into the hole on this lawsuit to the tune of $100,000 or more. It's a big investment for this guy.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a lot of money.
Is a lot of money. They're expensive, especially when you're a public figure.
Well, exactly, and that's stuff. But if it's $100,000 gone, he's only going to have $2 million left at the end when he definitely wins.
Yeah, he went over his budget when you figured
Exactly.
out 2 million. No, 2.1.
If he ends up with less than 2 million, then what's the fucking point?
Yeah. Again, guys, throw some money. Just, whatever you have, 5, 10, 25 at this nonsense.
Yeah, exactly.
In defense of free speech.
Yeah. This is such an obviously bogus case. It really shouldn't even have gone this far, I don't think. But I don't know the inner workings of the American legal system. So
I think basically it was filed, and then there are a series of motions that happens once a case is filed. Like with Sargon's case, they can go back and forth about certain things. Like in Sargon's case, he hid his real address, so they had to go chase him down in a different way, and they had to. So it goes very, very slowly. I don't even know that they've actually heard on the merits of the case whether or not to dismiss it yet.
Well, talking of motions, I think the entire case is a fucking motion, to be honest. But there we go.
Evacuation.
Yeah.
All right, let's get on.
I cannot imagine on everything I know about, which is I'm hardly a lawyer, but everything I know about our laws, I can't even know what they're thinking of. There's nothing that I've seen that anybody has said that Carrier hasn't already sort of either admitted to or is within the realm of like reasonableness.
Yeah, exactly.
I do not understand. What is he saying that they're even saying that isn't correct?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing. It's not like this is a man of absolutely impeccable character that these allegations couldn't possibly. Look, it's perfectly within the realms of reality that, given the things he's admitted to, these other things that you can't necessarily prove in a courtroom, but it seems perfectly in keeping with the kind of character he's shown himself and admitted himself to be.
So I would again recommend people go listen to the Andrew Torres analysis. But if I understood so there's like the obvious thing, he's a public figure, so the bar is really high. But when it comes to the technical stuff of the case, he loves that stuff and he gets really deep into it. And what is perhaps, the thing about this case that will also bring it down is Carrier didn't want to have to sue everybody in their own states because they're across several states. So his lawyer is making this argument about the way Ohio law works because he's brought the case in Ohio because he lives in Ohio and there's a federal court there. And they're making an argument based on Ohio case law that relates to a prior case where a reviewer went through Ohio and went to one business and then left and wrote up a review about the business, and it was deemed, like the person said, it was defamation. And so the law relates to commercial businesses targeted in Ohio. And the question for the court in that point would be, would people who live in different states who weren't writing for an Ohio audience qualify when they're not doing commercial enterprises either? They're like, a politics, their opinion function. Would that qualify under the law? Like, how would it fit? Because they don't meet a lot of the definitions. So there's like a whole technical thing that Andrew goes into way more detail about that you can listen to. But that explains why he's doing it with all of these people at once in one lawsuit. It's also cheaper that way, than pursuing everyone in their own states.
Yeah. Apparently, we might as well have invited Peasy on, frankly. But apparently, Carrier moved to Ohio days before filing the lawsuit. So presumably, he knew that when he was moving to Ohio, that it had a more broad definition and waited until he'd left to do that.
Well, if you want to bring him in, if you can send him a DM with the link.
It's probably a bit late now because we're 50 minutes in. But, yeah.
We were just going to talk about you, PZ. Sorry. We're just going to go to bat for you. So based on the lawsuit, I didn't know how much you'd be able to talk about. So, yeah.
Well, if you take the live chat off after we finish recording, I can, if you promise to, I can then claim that PZ was saying all kinds of crazy shit. and he wouldn't be able to prove otherwise.
But fortunately, now the live chats are captured for all time. So
no, but you can take them out if you edit the video. The live chat is disabled. I found that out.
All right, I think we should focus back here on back to the nonsense so that we can wrap this up.
I think that was exactly the right thing to do. But our correspondent charges on. Are the facts as Dr. Carrier has laid them out correct, or are there facts contradicting what he has stated and supporting your client's assertions against him? If so, please demonstrate that.
Sea lioning nonsense.
What was that?
This is just sea lioning at this point.
Yeah, exactly.
Nonsense.
Yeah, reason, science.
Report from this case. I will interpret your inability to do so as confirmation of our expectation that Dr. Carrier will prevail in this case and deserves my support.
Again, debate me or get off the internet. So, okay, we'll let him do the wrap up and then we can comment.
This is just stupefyingly arrogant. Why, no, Carrier's not correct, which is why we're standing up to his bullying. Our lawyer will make this case for us to the proper authorities, not to some rich rando who wants to join in on the bullying. And furthermore, what kind of delusional thinking is this? Imagine that we are lying and we've hired a frighteningly expensive defender of free speech to represent us. What's Randazzo going to do? Whisper, my clients are lying and we have no case at all, so help me lose. Does this guy not understand at all how lawyers work? Okay, this is just over the top stupidity. And you might be wondering who this pompous gasbag is. Well, he signs his letter. It's Mario Quadracki. You may have never heard of him, but apparently he's from a family of successful business people in Milwaukee. He's someone with enough money to be a major backer of the Mythicist Milwaukee organization and a supporter of MythCon, which you may have heard of. It's the conference that took a turn to the alt-right and brought in a group of speakers with no credentials other than that they have lots of subscribers on YouTube and many fervently nasty followers. And it was so successfully controversial that they're bringing them back this year. Oh, look, there's Mario Quadracki on the left. He's going to be moderating a discussion between Richard Carrier, disgraced sexual harasser, and Sargon of Akkad, or Carlos Swindon, whose infamy is well known. I think it's fair to say that this guy has a dog in this fight, and perhaps he has a stake in the outcome of Carrier's lawsuit. Geez, but that whole MythCon group is bringing even more toxicity to atheism. If you're looking for something that might be threatening a movement and a cause we care about, look no further than this. Okay, but we're committed to fighting back. We refuse to be bullied by these assholes. So there's been no real change in the court case so far. Our lawyer is cunningly maneuvering in clever lawyerly ways, and motions have been filed, and we're waiting a judge's decision on parts of the case. There are so many parts. You know that bit about the wheels of justice turn slowly but grind exceedingly fine? It's true, and every turn of the wheel has to be lubricated with a bucket of money. Unfortunately, while Richard Carrier is found an overbearing, haughty, stuffed shirt with no understanding of the law to pour money into his efforts to shut down free speech, we don't have such a character. We're getting by with lots of little donations from people who don't much like creepy people trying to suppress exposure of their bad behavior, and a good, competent lawyer who's costing us those buckets of money. So I guess we just have to turn to you, oh generous viewer.
But yeah, go give them money.
Yes.
Chrisiousity, more of your reactions and thoughts now as we've been processing this for the last hour.
I think she's.
I think she's
Hello? Sorry?
Yeah.
Was
Sorry,
that being interrupted by children? Because it would not be a stream without Chrisiousity without.
I was just for a second. Sorry about that.
Yeah,
I had singing at my door. So I had to go see what was going on. So, and mostly it's just people randomly singing at my door, like, because that happens sometimes.
Boston.
So what was the question? Was there a question?
Love it. Oh.
The question was, I guess, as someone who's planning on attending, what are your thoughts on this? I guess whatever you feel comfortable sharing publicly right now, because I didn't get invited, so I can sit outside and criticize it.
Yeah, I am. All right, so my thoughts on it, and this has been my major issue with MythCon the whole time, which is that they are normalizing a sort of behavior, or trying to normalize a sort of behavior that is harmful to many, many atheists. That of harassment, that of people who are in power over other people being able to use that against them, that of stifling of marginalized atheists within the community, pushing down on them.
Sorry.
I know that I sort of have been on this track many, many times before. But we have had the Church to movement, the Mosque to movement. There's been a recent movement of Catholics coming forward, Catholic nuns, people who, even as adults, have spent years and years being sort of under the thumb of other people, with all that contains. And the fact that they could leave these religious organizations with their staunch patriarchal attitudes and then go into an atheist organization and get exactly the same shit, is not good. And we need to do better for people leaving religion. Religion continues to be a major force within this world. We act like it's something we got over in the 50s or something. It's not. The vast majority of human beings on this planet are religious people. It's and leaving religious dogma for other types of ideas, other types of ways of looking at your world, at looking at your life, is difficult enough. If you don't have any reason to believe that it would be any better outside of it, you don't really have reason to do it. And that is probably one of the major reasons we see so few women atheists, so few atheists of color, why we have people leaving atheism who are LGBT or in other ways marginalized, because they won't be listened to. This is a sign from MythCon. We don't hear you. We don't want to hear you. If you try to speak up, we're going to push back against you. And that's unacceptable. And it should be unacceptable to anybody who considers themselves a free speaker, a free thinker, a person who is interested in hearing a variety of different ideas and perspectives. You have to welcome different perspectives. You can't throw SLAPP suits on people. You can't do this shit. And the vast majority of women, of marginalized people, they don't sit around and they're not like white dudes, all right? They're not going to sit there and shout at you like I am. I will do it, but I'm unusual. Most of them will go, okay, I got it. And they will walk away. And that's all, because they don't have the time, the energy to keep fighting every time. So I think that we need to stand up for people. We need to stand up for people who shouldn't have to be continuously begging for this attention and begging for somebody to stand up for them and getting turned away. All right, I've rambled a bit, but I am quite passionate on this. I think that people who live under religious, dogmatic, it's hell for many, many people, especially if you're gay, if you're a woman, if you have something like this going on, because in a religious environment that comes with judgment against you as being not as good, or being absolutely sinful, absolutely evil. Something is wrong with you. You know, I got that from my grandmother, and I mean, I loved her to pieces, but she'd tell me about my wickedness as if that were just a fact of reality, that people were wicked, like that you're just born that way, right? And especially if you're gay, especially if you're a woman, you're Eve. So you leave that and you are already somewhat internally wounded by that, because you can't help but being that way. And you leave it and you're like, well, I've got these free thinking people, these people who aren't all caught up in this patriarchal nonsense. Let's see what they have to say. And what they have to say is exactly the same thing as the shit you just left. Meet the new boss. It's the same as the old boss. And that's a fucking pisser.
All I can do is echo Hank in the chat who said, Chrisiousity for president.
Yeah. There'll be no little kids in cages, I promise you that.
But can you take the pay cut? Because that's, I presume you're earning millions from George Soros at the moment, so I don't know if that's how that's going to work for you. But, yes.
Anyway.
I hope you get to say something like that at MythCon.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, so it's been building up. Thank you for letting me get it off my chest.
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, I think that this was, this story has a lot of different angles and a lot of things to, you know, point out and go, this doesn't seem right. In fact, this seems very wrong. And yeah, calling it out and pointing it out is so more people can be made aware of it, because I don't think MythCon is going to talk, you know, about, there's not a whisper network to protect people from Richard Carrier backstage. I don't know what he's doing now, but you know, that's how people used to try to get around these things, was the whisper campaign. Right. So I don't know what they're going to say about him. Are they even going to bring this up? I mean, it seems to me to be such a conflict of interest now, to have one of your funders to also be on stage and funding a lawsuit to suppress the freedom of speech of the person that, you know, you're like moderating a debate with and friends with. I mean, it just, it seems highly questionable. As would you want your money funding a conference that's going to go to the pockets of these guys?
Though I will say, I think that it is, it's very funny to me that some of the money that people put forward is going to me. Hi, people who thought they were putting money
to fund Sargon flying over. Instead, it's going to be your hotel suite.
Yes. And I promise to get a nice hard drink for y'all and just suck it down and enjoy it on your dime, babies.
Well, I think that seems like a sensible place to end. Does anyone else? Kevin, do you want to come in before we wrap it up?
No, I was just going to say, you both said everything that needed to be said. I can add nothing further.
Well, you did add much during the show, many laughs, so I appreciate it. Again, you guys go to the links in the description box below to help fund the countersuit or the legal effort to knock down this nonsense.
Definitely do that.
Yes.
You know, it's a good place to stick your money.
Yes. Yeah, and also, you know, check out Chrisiossity's channel. Of course, check out Kevin's channel, my co-host.
But mainly mine, let's be honest.
Go to PZ's channel.
Go to my channel.
Watch his video, like it, and share it. Basically, call BS.
Now go to. I joke, but Chrisiostity's channel is very good as well. Her breakdown of last year's MythCon
Oh,
thing
yeah.
is very, very good.
Can you plug that a little bit, Christiosity, before we go off air?
Yes, I've gotten about halfway through it because I do a little bit of a video and then I get tired of looking at it and then I go do something else and I come back. But I have made several videos really breaking down what I see as how MythCon is very emblematic of what has gone wrong in the new atheist movement, and where it's sort of struggling right now, and where maybe it could get better, or maybe it just needs to, go away. I don't know. It would be good if we didn't have to recreate the entire wheel. But at this point, it's sort of degenerated into race realism and anti-feminism and reactionary ideologies and all kinds of nonsense. And this is, and that has gotten us to MythCon. So yay.
Yeah, so go check that out. And with that, I think all that's left to be said, guys, is that I've been Kristi. My guests have been awesome. People in the chat have been awesome, I bet mostly. And people watching in the future have been awesome. So goodbye for me.
Apart from Peasy. Peasy Moore has added nothing to this. It's great.
So say goodbye, Christiosity.
Bye.
And say goodbye, Kev.
Goodbye, Kev. Always do the bit.
Guys. Always do the bit. Bye.